The WBA have ordered Luis Ortiz to defend his interim world title against Alexander Ustinov on or before June the 19th. This will also serve as some type of eliminator, I believe, for Tyson Fury's super version of the belt. That's my understanding. If I'm wrong on that, please correct me. It may be for the winner of Chigaev against Lucas Brown, but I believe it's actually for Tyson Fury's WBA super belt. A lot of people are very high on Luis Ortiz at the moment, and I've always found him an interesting prospect, an interesting contender now. But I'm not quite as sold on him as a lot of other people seem to be. And as impressive as his victory over Brian Jennings was, I still saw weaknesses there, to be honest with you. To me, he seemed a little bit easier to back up than I was expecting. I found that a little bit alarming, considering that he was the bigger man in there against Jennings, but Jennings didn't have that much trouble backing him up. Some people are going to say, well, Ortiz chose to go backwards, but I'm not so sure. And the biggest issue I felt, or the biggest weakness I saw, was Ortiz's stamina. To me, Ortiz looked like he was seriously blowing halfway through that fight. The knockout came in a timely fashion, because had it gone into the late rounds, I don't know what might have happened, because to me, Ortiz was fatiguing badly. And against a guy like Ustinov, who is 6'8", 6'9", if Ustinov keeps the fight long and boxes and forces Ortiz to have to come to him, I think Ortiz is going to get tired by the second half of the fight. Tired enough that Ustinov might be able to make it difficult for him, maybe even spring the upset. A lot of people, in fact, most people who I see online talking about Ustinov don't rate him highly at all. He was stopped. His only loss in his career was to Kubrat Pulev, and he was stopped late in that fight. I believe it was like the 10th or the 11th round. Pulev was landing some solid shots. Ustinov took a knee and didn't get back up. And a lot of people have looked at that and said, well, Pulev ain't very good and he managed to stop Ustinov, so that's that. Ustinov's rubbish. I don't really concur with that viewpoint. And from what I've seen of Ustinov since that Pulev loss, no, he hasn't been fighting great opposition, but his technique to me, and maybe even his, how can I put it? To me, his technique seems to have improved a little bit. He seems a little bit looser. And I'm not sure what he's been weighing lately, but he's looked a bit livelier than he was prior to the Kubrat Pulev fight. So I don't see this Ustinov-Ortiz fight as a foregone conclusion in Luis Ortiz's favor. I just don't see that. I'm not convinced by Ortiz's stamina. Yes, he's a skilled fighter. But one, he's not as big as I thought he was. He's 6'4", but he's not one of the giant heavyweights. And as I said in a previous video about Luis Ortiz, apparently this guy fought at heavyweight in the amateurs, which is essentially cruiserweight. Okay, because in the amateurs, you got heavyweight and you got super heavyweight. So he was basically a cruiserweight in the amateurs when he was in his 20s. So he's not naturally that big, actually. 6'4", is, fairly tall, but his shoulders ain't that broad. It's just he's got a tiny head. So it makes his shoulders look broad, but they're not really that broad. He's not really a big framed guy like that. And he's going to be dwarfed by Alexander Ustinov, who's likely going to have, the reach on him probably. Obviously the height. May even have the physical strength on him. In fact, I suspect he will. And yes, you look at Kubrat Pulev. I believe, Pulev fought at super heavyweight in the amateurs. I'm sure for certainly the latter half of his amateur career, he fought at super heavyweight. He's only 6'4.5" himself, Kubrat Pulev, and he was able to defeat Ustinov and stop him. But I think Pulev has got better stamina than Luis Ortiz. And obviously Pulev is a bit younger than Ortiz. So, yeah, I'm not 100% fully sold on Ortiz yet. He's got skills, he's got ability, but I saw a few things there in the Jennings fight. As impressive as it was, as good a puncher as he is, and he has nice technique. I mean, tell me a Cuban who doesn't have nice technique. All these guys are extremely well schooled. But when it comes to the Cuban heavyweights, it's never the technique that is the biggest issue. It's normally the conditioning. And Ortiz seems to be in better condition than a Mike Perez, or certainly better condition than Odliner Solis. What the hell ever happened to him? But he's still not in the kind of condition. Maybe it's just his age. I mean, he's supposedly 36 years old. Some people are speculating he's probably a lot older than that. When people come from other countries, I guess you could say third world countries, no disrespect to any Cubans out there, but I guess you could call Cuba a third world country. When you're coming from a third world country, a lot of the time, the papers are not legit and stuff like that, and people's ages can get scrubbed out and a different age can be put on. So some people are speculating Ortiz is actually older than 36. I don't know what it is. But once you reach your late 30s, unless you're taking all types of stuff, as Ortiz was previously, he got caught for steroids, but in his last fight against Jennings, he was off the steroids. If he's clean and he's in his late 30s at the very least, his stamina is not going to be that great anyway. And against a big, tall guy like Ustinov, you're going to have to work your way in. You're going to have to exert a lot of pressure on Ustinov to get to him. You're going to have to punch upwards. I find it difficult seeing how he's going to beat Ustinov comfortably without working extremely hard. And I don't know if he's got that kind of gas tank. I'm really not sure about it. I'd make him the favorite, but actually, you know what? I wouldn't make him the favorite. I'm going to reserve my judgment on the fight and hold, telling you what my prediction is for the fight until closer to the fight itself, because it might not even happen. We don't know. And, you know how the landscape of boxing is. It's always changing. So I'll leave it till then. But yeah, I don't see it as a foregone conclusion. That's what I will say. Let me know how you feel about this fight. I'm sure most of you disagree with me. I'm sure most of you are going to say Ustinov is absolute garbage. Ortiz is just going to run through him like a train. It won't even be competitive. I'm sure most people will say that. Hey, that's your opinion, and you've got every right to it. Drop your comments in the comment section below. Let me know how you feel. It's your boy Hatman. I'm out.